The UX will be the architecture and functionality of the house. How are the room laid out? What is the distance between bathroom and bedroom? The role of the UX is to minimize product risk and to maximize usability before the cost came real. I think we very often forgot about it, but at the end we all build these products. We support products in the area of compliance, investment, currency exchange, the CRM.
Welcome to Raiffeisen Tech Podcast created by the employees of Raiffeisen Tech Poland to share our stories, case studies, experience, and to show what we do. If you like it, subscribe and stay up to date with our episodes. The guest of today's episode is Tomasz Przewłocki, the UX design lead at Raiffeisen Tech.
Hello, everyone.
Tomek, I got some info about you. Tell me if that's true. Privately, a mountain, cycling and snowboarding enthusiast.
True.
He has 2 cats, and recently he adopted a dog from a shelter.
It's also true.
He's a firm believer in the principle that less is more.
Yeah.
Okay, so in today's episode, we will discuss topics such as what UX in banking truly is, which problems most commonly appear in digital products, how UX and UI audit differs from simply assessing an application's appearance, what the full audit process looks like, and what business benefits even small UX improvements can bring. So let's get started. If you had to explain in 30 seconds what UX is, what would you say?
It's ensuring that using a product is simple, understandable, enjoyable. It's not just about how something looks, but whether the user knows what to do, isn't frustrated, and achieves their goal. The good UX makes the product just works, and the user don't have to think about it.
Okay, and what are the elements of UX?
It depends, though there is no single first elements, let's say, of the UX, because we treated UX as a process, not like the checklist or something like that. It really depends on what, like on when designer joined the product, for example. It took different when the product is just begin or the different when the product already exists. So designer role is to assess what is currently important and how to check whether the product meets the need of the users. Although we are talking about the design, as I mentioned, as a process, and it's never linear, so there are different parts different, let's say, approaches we can use to check, like how product behave, or, for example, if it's not started yet, like what are the needs, like how we can check with the user or with the businesses about what problem we would like to solve. So there are like research, we can analyze the data, we can organize some workshops, we can do audit, or like we can build like just simple prototype just to validate the rough idea and check with the users if this is something that the direction is proper, like from the problem that we would like to solve. So there are like many different elements, but like we use them in the different purposes on different levels and different moments of the product.
But what I understand, all those elements are around the user of the product. So because you mentioned research, so this is about asking, looking around how users would behave or how they are behaving?
It depends, like, as I mentioned, like when and where the product is right now. Because like, if we see that there is a solution or there is a functionality that works somehow, but we feel that maybe this is not the best way how we can solve the problem, then we can just rapidly do some workshops and build some prototype based on findings on this workshop. Or we can, if we don't have time for workshop, we can do audit and check in this audit, like from the expert perspective, like what we see. Maybe there is something that we can easily fix, for example. So there is many different things. I think every case is different. Every product is different. There is no like one answer.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks. And how do you distinguish UX and UI? What is the example from real life so our listeners can see this?
I really like metaphors. I think they help understand the complex things. And I pretty often use the metaphor of designing a house in case of UX and UI. So like the UX will be the architecture and functionality of the house. How are the room laid out? For example, what is the distance between bathroom and bedroom? Is the kitchen close to the dining room so you don't have to like carry plates across whole house? Like there's the functionality aspect of designing the apartment or house, and the UI is of course important part, but this is like this visual aspect, let's say. So like what is the color of walls, like what kind of tiles are you in the bathroom? So UI is part of the UX in the other order, but it's like the house can be beautiful, finish it like with great UI, but if for example, the light switch is behind the wardrobe and the only bathroom is on the second floor, it's really like uncomfortable to live there. So this is, I think, an example that we all know somehow.
Mm-hmm. Of course. What can a UX designer bring to a project?
In my personal opinion, and the role of the UX is to minimize product risk and maximize usability before the cost came real, like, for example, in the development or the customer support. There are like different, let's call it categories. We can put those attributes, like the first will be in the understanding the problem and the user. So like who is the user, why, in what context they will use the product, what are the needs, barriers, motivations, arranging the logic of the solution, like this more likely the flow scenarios, like edge cases, like the priorities for the users, structure and clarity of the interface. So like in information architecture, like navigation, content hierarchy, like readability, like stuff like that. I think one of the most known, especially from the many people, like is the design itself, like the mocks, prototype, like microcopy, validation fields, like loading states, error states, something like that, like the let's say the outcome of all of those previous categories and steps. Then is of course like specification for developers, how components should behave, like what are the rules, like what are the accessibility requirements, if we would like to use design system, which one, like what component from this design system, if we need to customize it somehow. Last but not least, definitely, and I think one of the most important is like the verification of the decision with data. Usability tests, interviews, behaviors, analysis, feedback collection, like also those things I mentioned previously, like the workshop, audit. This is something like the tools that help us validate at the end, like if this is good direction for the product.
Really big range of things you can bring and how you can support the project.
Yeah, and something I mentioned on the beginning, like also the risk and cost reduction, because like at the end, if we figure it out on the early stage, like what is really needed, and we can build, as I mentioned, like for example, prototype, go back to the users, go back to stakeholders and ask if this really works for them and really help them, their like daily job. We can really reduce the cost for the development, even if the initial idea was fine. But still, like this helps, I think, like reduce really a lot of costs after implementation.
Okay, so what is UX in the context of Raiffeisen Tech? What do you do? What products and what services?
I think at Raiffeisen Tech is not much different from what I mentioned earlier, especially from the process perspective. We support products in the area of compliance, investment, currency exchange, the CRM, and few others. That these are both like internal product and those that are client-facing, like in RBI Group in different markets. These are products that we support like on a daily basis, but we also help like where it's needed. Some time ago, we support our colleagues in Hungary by auditing, like customer transaction management application, if I remember correctly. On the other occasion, we design like POC for colleagues. It was, I think, from Slovakia or Czech. It was like mobile application for investment in various investment product. And we designed with them like prototype. They check with their users. So it was like a variety of the possibilities, let's say. The process I mentioned earlier can be like used wherever we want to improve the user experience or validate the needs. As I mentioned, like we have several, let's call it tools or part of the process, of design process that can be used in different ways, even if the product exists, not exists. Like we have like a rough idea everywhere when we can bring a value to the business or to the users, we will be happy to help.
Who does a UX designer collaborate with on a project?
On the daily basis, we work closely with the business, so business analysts, stakeholders, product owners, and development teams, so like the front end and back end.
And how does this collaboration look like?
There is actually no clear answer of this. Of course, there are moments when negotiations are heated and it takes a while when we reach like the final agreement. But I think that ultimately we all have the same goal, just different path to go there. We want our user to be able to use the product we offer in an easy and enjoyable way. It's clear that on the way to this goal, developer pay attention to different things than business analysts, who in turn pay different things than designers. So sometimes we have to look for compromises, but if we understand that these differences between us and respect each other, I think we ultimately find a way to the agreement.
Mm-hmm. So what I understand is that this collaboration sometimes may be challenging.
Yes.
And how about the situation when UX designer says one thing, but the business wants something else?
Again, like we sit down and share like the needs and how we can solve them. At the end, of course, we need to agree on something. But in the cases where like we don't have, for example, we can agree, but we see the problem differently. We can use like one of the things we did, maybe not daily, but as a part of the process, we can, for example, build prototype and go to the user, for example, for some quick round and show them like, okay, like we see it in that way. What do you think? And they pretty often help us with shaping the direction, or like they are really clear with if this helped them or not. So this is like, as I mentioned, at the end, like I believe we have the same goal. Path that can be different, can be sometimes tough, but maybe this is like my personal perspective, but if we decide that, for example, in this specific case, for this specific product, in this specific moment, we need to skip building ideal solution or the solution that will fit like me more from perspective of UX designer. Okay, like let's do it, and maybe we'll back to adjusting or some refinement after some time when the space will be much bigger for such improvements. So I think it's rather how we communicate together, and I believe like if we would like to find a way, we always find it. So,
especially if we have got the same goal, right?
Yes. I think we pretty often forgot about it, that at the end we all build these products, not designer, not business analyst, not front-end developer. Like at the end, like the product is one.
What's the benefit of working with a UX designer from Raiffeisen Tech as a part of RBI Group?
I think it's definitely much easier for both sides, because maybe we don't know each other yet, but as a team, we work on different various projects, like from 6 years. So we have some experience related to different part of projects from different type of products we offer. I think it's much easier to, let's call it hire, to speak with people that are familiar who you are, how you work, like even like technology you use on daily basis with different initiatives. So I think if I need to tell it in one sentence, is like we are much closer than, for example, like the vendors. And we had experience. We have a lot of great relations in our product in different roles. And we say this pretty often when we look on demand of UX needs in the group. So we pretty often have like really positive feedback from previous project, and new initiatives ask us how and when we can help, for example. So it shows that what we did and what we are doing like daily basis works. So I believe it can work and can help the others. So I think it's some kind of big family, but you live in different cities and different places, but you have strong relations still.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And you mentioned before some audits. So can you tell us more? How does it work? How does it look like? And what are the benefits of it?
I feel that the word audit is pretty often misinterpreted in the context of like improvement products. Audit, it's correlated with controlling, and I think we should think about it a bit different. We try to improve something. It's not mean that something on somebody do something wrong. The technology evolve, times change, like user adapt to those changes. So sometimes the audit is needed.
So it's not to point mistakes,
exactly,
but to help to improve the product that we have right now.
Yes. And the audit provides an objective list of the problem with prioritization to help you know like how to fix those things in which order. It provides a common language for discussion with the business and developers instead of saying that this is innovative. You have specific heuristic that you can point out, and it also helps justify the investment in the redesign. You have the documentation of the problem, not just, hunches. And audit, I believe, can also catch the accessibility topics, for example, before they become like regulatory risk. So it's just like not only pointing out, but also like supporting with the changes that, for example, happen from the regulatory perspective. And how it is conducted. So typically, heuristic audit involves reviewing of the product through the lens of the usability perspectives. We use something that is called like Nielsen heuristic. There are 10 of them. The process look like this, that we first define the scope, which screens and which path we will test. With complex internal application, it's impossible to go through all of them, so we need to prioritize it. It also helps us, for example, distinguish like what are critical flows. Maybe this is the most important functionality of the service or the application. So we need to do this exercise first before we start to auditing. And then we go through the product as a user, documenting every problem. For each problem, we try to note, like with heuristic, it's valid, how serious it is. Like we have a scale from 1 to 4, and where exactly it's like occurs. So like we try to also do some screenshots just to document it. Finally, we compile a report with some recommendation grouped by the topics, for example. What is, I think, important is to, if it's possible, to do such audit by 2 or 3 persons in the same time independently, just to compare results, for example, at the end and see like if we see this struggles like in the same way or they occur maybe in the same path, in the same moment of the flow, or maybe they occur in different ways in different places. So like it's help us at the end to really distinguish like priorities and what is really something that we need to really work with from the beginning or as a priority number 1.
Mm-hmm. So the more people who are auditing point the same place where they struggle, it means that it's more important to fix this.
Yes.
Okay. And let's imagine that we have got the audit results, and what is happening next? I assume that you may collaborate with the IT teams, development teams, and business. How does it work?
I think it's a crucial thing here is to establish like few things like at the beginning. Like even the best reports is worthless if it doesn't translate to like change at the end. So we try to, before the audit, we try to engage stakeholders and talk to the product owner, business, developers, of course, about goals, about user problems, about technical limitations, and agree in advance like what will happen with the results, whether there will be a meeting, the summary. We will sit down and do some backlog of those priorities, like many different things. And during the audit, as I mentioned, we document in a way that is understandable and not to designers, or to not designers, let's say. Instead of heuristic violation, like as a term, we write like specifically what the problem was, point out like and why it matters to the business. And as I mentioned, we do some screenshot. We try to group the problems in smaller topics, for example, so that to provide at the end like really like usable document report that will be easy to use for non-designer people. It of course depends, like if we do some presentation after we collect all of those things, or we just send a PDF, or we sit down together and prioritize it. It really depends. But after the presentation, we try to convert recommendation into tickets in the backlog, just to have them. It's always have them tickets in some backlog, then have some report in some folder on your computer. It's always, you can be much more sure that somebody someday will check this backlog. It's not always need to be in the way that this audit need to be, like huge one. Like we will audit like whole application. Sometimes it's easier to do smaller parts. Maybe with such approach, it helps to really put those findings top on the priorities on the backlog. So I know that I answer all of that. It depends, but it really depends. But in that way, like it's also, I think, show that we can adjust somehow to how the product work, what is the dynamic of the team, what resources we have to be sure that at the end we provide some value. Maybe smaller one, maybe in some iterations, but some.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it doesn't make any sense to have the audit to have another file documentation, right?
We need not to change. The purpose, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So what are the benefits of good UX in banking?
It depends on the product. If we go back to the beginning of our conversation, I mentioned that UX minimizes risk. When we validate needs at the outset, we save the time and money in the future. And ultimately, this benefits like for the entire organization that we save some assets, some money. If we simplify time-consuming processes for the user in the design process, we make them, I think, more willing to use our products. And I feel that we really care about their convenience. And I think this approach built a relation between us and the customers. It influences their trust in what we offer, which I think is very important. So this is like much bigger than just like design itself. Building a relation is not simple, I guess. And I say like we, because I said, as I said earlier, it's ultimately the work of the whole team, like not just the designers. At the end, like as I mentioned about the goal, like at the end, we are all responsible for that. So yeah, I think it's it. Ensuring usability does not always mean sophisticated and complex functionality. Sometimes it's some of small things, and we sometimes forget about it.
So what I get from this is that through good UX, we show that we care for our customers, the users,
yes.
And both external, so the customers, and internal.
This is the one of myth. Let's say that internal users are also users. Like we should remember about it, that we also try to help them like in daily basis of their work. So we should care, and we try to care, and we care, I guess, in the same way as we treat like clients of the bank. So from me personally, there is no difference here.
Good. You mentioned before the accessibility. So tell me, what role does accessibility play, and why it is coming more and more often in the conversations with teams?
So accessibility should be, like, in my opinion, internal part of the design process, not just like another requirement. Recently, the topic has come back more strongly in connection with this implementation of this European Accessibility Act. And we often mistakenly equate accessibility only with the people with some disabilities, but in the fact each of us like may incur like accessibility barriers in like some circumstances. So we need to remember that this is for all of us, not for some people. But our colleague, Dominik Seroczyński, talked about it very well in one of our last episodes in previous season. So I highly recommend to watch what Dominik said then.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And when does this UX UI audit make the most sense? I mean, when it's worth considering to run this?
There are at least few such moments. I will maybe talk about like 4 of them. When the product has grown organically over the years, and internal banking are like, I think, classic example of it. Different models written by different teams at different times, so like consistent vision. I think audit can help here to see like whole picture and highlight like some things that are like inconsistent, for example. So this is like one of the example. Another is when there are signs that something is not working, but it's not clear what. Pretty often we can hear some like, for example, for the customer support, like some complaints, tickets, for example, to the support, like many different things like this should show us we need to maybe consider, like check what is happening. After taking over a product from one team to another or from one company to another, UX audit is cheaper than and can really replace the, for example, long researches. Will like propose some values that we need to consider to take or to some direction that we need to consider to take. When there's no budget or time to full user research, the UX expert audit is cheaper and faster. Of course, it's not replace the research, but provides some values with less effort, let's say. However, what is important, and we talk about it earlier, regardless of the circumstances, the audit will make sense only at the end, actually translate with some changes that will be provided to the apps or to the products.
You mentioned before the very direct feedback from the users that something doesn't work or something like that. What if we don't get this feedback? How we can realize that something needs to be changed because it's not working properly? How we can see this if we haven't got the message, for example, from the user?
It's a tough one. I think it's the challenge sometimes is because people get used to how some things works, and there's nothing wrong with that, but they don't even realize that maybe not something is broken, but can works better, quicker, can solve some things in some smaller amount of steps, for example. From my experience, I never had such situations. In every cases, we get some red signs, maybe not even like from the audit like itself, but like somebody asks us like, can you take a look? I have feeling that something is maybe not wrong, but can be better because I saw like how this product solves a similar thing. Mm-hmm. And I think there is room for improvement. And this open discussion. And then we can like jump into the, for example, test environment and look like how this works, like how this was designed, like how this is built. For example, we can just ask like front-end colleagues if there is some limitation regarding technology, for example. So it will never work if somebody will have doubts, like mm-hmm. if this can be better, if this is really properly implemented, properly designed. Like I think I mentioned it before, like technology is changing so fast. And it's nothing wrong that something was designed and built in such way, like, 5 years ago. It's natural. But technology change and people also adapt to those changes. And there is like one of my favorite UX law. It's Jakob's law. And this Jakob's law said that your user use other products in internet, and they expect that those products will behave similarly. Many different things work in that way. And this is pretty simple thing when you start to understand like what it's about. But pretty often this is also like the moment when they realize that I use this type of application for different purposes, and it's much simpler for some reasons. And why is that? Maybe I will ask my manager or my colleague or whoever if we have impact for it. Like maybe we can just like highlight it that maybe somebody should look on it. So in every case, I guess there was somebody spent some time to consider if this is like, it should be like this.
Mm-hmm.
Without this curiosity, but without this validation, if this is still valid, there will be no change.
Mm-hmm. You said interesting thing, because as users, we don't like be challenging every time we are using some, banking application, for example, right? Because I can use 2 or 3 different of them and I'm expecting they would be similar. So if something is different, it is challenging for me because I need to think more.
This is something we call it interaction cost. We have a term to that. We have many different terms, many different laws.
Yeah, I hear.
And this interaction cost can be mentally or physically. And I always try to highlight that this mental cost is always bigger than the physical one. Especially when we start to talking about like internal application, like when different part of organization or different user can use different tools for maybe not for same purposes, but they need to cooperate for some reasons. And even like if navigation in those 3 products works differently, mm-hmm. they need to take some cost every time when they switch between those applications. So it's sometimes invisible, but this cost exists. So this is like one of the things that we can check by the audit.
Okay. So do you have the example of a small change in UX design that made a big difference?
I think I mentioned it before that sometimes this is some of small things and they create a big difference. In one product, the analysts showed that the user were entering incomplete information that was crucial for the process. And after some interviews, it turned out that pretty often they forgot about those information or just simply like they don't have it. And as I mentioned, it was crucial. And thinking about how to help them, we discovered that we could use a database that collect those informations. And the user need to enter only the one value, which they pretty often remember. It was like pretty crucial for the process, and the system will take all those information will fill automatically. So we just maybe in pretty easy way, we shift the responsibilities from the user to the system, which is I think like one of the goal of good user experience that those days system can provide and help user like doing some task for them. Mm-hmm. In the other case, during the usability testing, we noticed that users spent a lot of time manually copying information from one system to another. And they copy like 6-7 fields one by one. And this is like nothing special, nothing fancy, but we add just simple feature that will copy all of those information at once. And again, like if this is task that you do every day, and every day you need to spend the time like to copy and paste, and you just can't do it like at once. Mm-hmm. It makes your life easier. But it's nothing fancy like this. As I mentioned, sometimes it's just small things that help like on one click in this mm-hmm. case.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So talking about the effectiveness of UX design, how can you measure this? What metrics are used?
It depends on the context. I think it's crucial to adapt the metrics to the product at the earliest possible stage. In our products, user flow is often not linear, so there are some metrics that will be difficult to measure. However, metrics that are always worth to consider are CSAT, because this is one of the most popular one, which can be, of course, like, for example, linked to the specific areas of the product, like what was fine, what was not fine, to not measure only like if this is like 5 stars or 5 hearts or 3 hearts, but related specific measure to the specific section or specific topics that I rated in that way because this is this and that. And then this also give you some like space to consider, like people rate this product or this flow for 3 from 1 to 5 and mention also these things. So this help us, for example, build some assumptions, which we can then like check with the interviews or like on the workshops. Like it's maybe that measure itself is not like sophisticated, but it helps. The other one I really like, it's SUS, it's System Usability Scale. It's also simple metrics with, I think, it was like 10 questions there. When we ask, where we ask the user how they rate that specific aspect of the system. And in this case, it's because like the CSAT we can measure like all the time. We can measure it like as a overall satisfaction or the satisfaction from like complete some tasks. But the system usability scale, I think it's better to consider to measure, for example, before and after like some big change of the product or the flows to see the differences. But it's like, of course, there's many more. Like, but I think even those two show us some place where we are and if there is some room for improvement.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And the final question. How can you tell when a company has a mature UX?
Like the big boss in the games. There is no easy answer to that. There is something called MDI. This is a McKinsey Design Index. It is a result of studying the McKinsey conduct to see if there is possibility to prove numerically that investment in a design translate into business results. And they analyze companies' design practice and correlate them with some final results like the revenue growth or total shareholder return. And based on this, they created this index that measure, let's say, that like organization design maturity. And they identified like 4 practices that distinguish leaders from the rest. And again, it's nothing, let's say, new, nothing that we don't talk about today. The first one is like analytical approach to the design, so measuring the impact of the design of the business, not just like we feel that UX is better, but like have some metrics, have some KPIs as we discussed like on this previous question. The second is continuous user research, so not one-off research at the beginning of the project, but constant contact with users through the product lifecycle, leading the companies combine quantitative data and qualitative data to provide such information, and they did it like constantly. The third is the cross-functional team with designers. I think we also covered it today. Design is like not a separate department and just get the briefs and deliver mocks. But designers sitting together with product owners, with business analysts, with developers, and like they are responsible like all for the product at the end. And the last one is like the user experience is also on this leadership level. It's not just like delegate, but it's treated as a value on this board member level. And this is like treated like maybe not as a priority, but it's strategically important for the organization. And unfortunately, we are never included in such study. It was like, I think in 2018, but looking at the practices that McKinsey take into account, I think we are doing well. and I hope it will be only better. And I think like the opportunity we have today to discuss about it, it's one of the examples that we are going in the good direction, I guess.
Good news for the end of this conversation. Hot or not, this is the part where together with our guest, we bust or confirm some of the most popular stories tied to today's theme. Tomek, I've got a mix of myths and hits about UX. After I read each one, tell us first whether you think it's hit or myth, and then explain why. Ready?
I will try to.
Good. UX is mainly about aesthetics. If an application looks nice, it means it has a good UX.
I think we covered today. Aesthetic is, of course, part of the experience, a good one, but it's not the core. It's rather like something that can bring additional value, but can't work without functionalities properly designed or implement. So, myth.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Another one, UX makes sense only in customer-facing applications. Internal systems don't need a good UX.
Also myth. I don't like to differentiate users only based on like if they work with the internal tools or the client-facing ones. So like both should work with the tool or use the tool that are properly designed for the needs.
Mm-hmm. If users don't report issues, it means the UX works well.
Tough one. I will say yes, it can be true, but also I think we discussed this also today that people sometimes get used to how things works. It doesn't mean that it works properly, but they can, for example, they can be aware that something can work better. So we pretty often said that like if something was designed and implemented properly, you won't see the problems, but like this also can be maybe not a myth, but something that need to be, for example, in the audit or the interview checked.
Mm-hmm. A UX UI audit is something you only need when something is clearly not working.
Myth definitely is one of the reasons you should consider it, but definitely not the only one.
Mm-hmm. Good UX is a cost that is hard to justify from a business perspective.
I will say the myth. I think this is an approach that can reduce the costs on early stage. So it should rather help than reduce the cost, for example.
Mm-hmm. Users always know what they want. You just need to ask them.
Oh, this is a great one. This is myth. I'm not saying that we shouldn't ask the users, but many things appear when you start to observe how they behave. And sometimes this can be opposite of what they talk. It's a really tricky one. I think it's a quote from Mr. Ford. He mentioned many years ago that if he would ask his customer like what they want, they will say that the faster horses. So it's still valid.
Mm-hmm. Accessibility is a niche topic that concerns only a small group of users.
Oh, definitely. I think Dominic explained it pretty well in one of our last episodes. This is something that should be like regular part of every process in case of design and development, not something like we consider to have it. So, myth.
Mm-hmm. UX is something that only a designer should deal with.
Myth, and I actually disagree. Of course, like we have different tools to provide great user experience, but from my career and also my experience working here, I saw like many times like developers or business analysts came to me and asked me like, listen, like I see this or that, and I think we can solve it in this or that way. And I many times said like, it's a great idea. Let's do it. I think in the same way. So why not? It's not only responsibility on the designer, on the designer's daily job, but like a whole team prepare and provide like great experience.
Mm-hmm. Small UX changes don't make a big difference. Major redesigns are needed.
Myth, but I will once more say that it of course depends, but sometimes big change is needed. But from my experience, even small change can be valuable and visible pretty often and can bring a lot of value. I think we also discussed it today about it, that some of small things can be big different.
Mm-hmm. If a product works technically well, UX is just nice to have.
It's also a myth. We saw it in one example I mentioned today, that when you do audit from the legacy app, for example, you saw that probably those days, those technology was up to date and realized the need. But like today, we still have this app. We still need to use it. They still have a lot of users, but today the approach is different, and some change, or maybe not in the redesign, but even small adjustments can help. So it's rather mix of technology, so like development approach and user experience design approach mixed together.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for this conversation. It was really interesting, and I'm glad that you found time to share this news as the guest in our podcast.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening our episodes. And as said at the very beginning, if you like, I would invite you to subscribe our channels and stay up to date with new episodes. This episode was prepared by Ewa Kolnier as a host, Monika Nowak and Klaudia Bednarczyk as coordinators, Mirko Ivankovic and Mateusz Czerniakowski as editors.